When you look at a map of Tasmania, you will see that the River Derwent, the most important river in our island, rises in the central tablelands. It flows to the southeast, down past the town of New Norfolk, to join the sea at Hobart. The soil of the Derwent Valley is rich, and there are many prosperous farms and orchards here. Early in the history of Tasmania, settlers came to take up land in this fertile valley. Many fine old houses stand along the river with their farm buildings carved from the local stone. About 14 miles above New Norfolk, the Derwent Valley spreads out into a broad, flat expanse. Here, sheltered by rows of poplar trees, lie the hop grounds, where most of the hops in Australia are grown. Bushy Park and Glenora are the two main hop-growing centres here. Through the trees, you can see the ventilators of the hop kilns. Wherever hops are grown, you will find these buildings. The hop growers bring their hops here at harvest time to dry them and store them. Hops were first brought to Tasmania from England in 1804. So hop growing is one of our oldest industries. The Shoobridge family have grown them here for over 130 years. This fine old kiln was built in 1867 by Ebenezer Shoobridge and his family. Before the first Shoobridges came to Tasmania, they were growing hops in England, in the county of Kent. Hops have been grown there for over 500 years. Henry Shoobridge carries on the family tradition. He has spent his life growing hops and studying the habits of the plants. Today it is a fine September morning, and Henry Shoobridge is on his way to the hop grounds. There is important work to be done. In wintertime and early spring, the hop grounds are bare, because the hop plants are still under the earth. Hops grow up from the same roots year after year, so we call them perennials. In spring, before they start growing, the hills of plants must be uncovered and the dead remains of last year's growth pruned off. This operation is called dressing the hills. When the hill has been dressed, it is covered up again. Then the ground between the rows of hills is cultivated to make it level and to kill the weeds. Soon the young shoots of the hop plants are pushing through the soil into the warm spring sunshine. Now it is October, and the rows of young hop vines make a green pattern across the brown fields. Hops are climbing plants, so strings to support them must be tied to the wires that run overhead on the tall poles. This is called stringing, and here is the string cut. While the men on top of the string cart are tying the strings to the wires, the men on the ground are fixing the other ends into the soil, close to the hills. The men use a special tool with a fork at the end to drive the string deep into the ground, 2 or 3 strings to every hill. Slowly the hop ground turns into a giant spider's web. The weather is getting warmer these days, and the hops have started growing, so the hop growers have a busy time. The stringing is finished, and the next job Henry Shoobridge has to look after is the tying of the vines. Before the vines can start climbing, their young shoots must be carefully twisted around the strings. This is called tying. The hops will grow 15 to 20 feet up to the overhead wires, so they must have a good start. 2 strong shoots are twisted around each string. The rest are pulled out. This important work of tying is usually done by women. Many of the people who work in the hop grounds have lived at Bushy Park or Glenora all their lives. They all know one another, and they know the secret of growing good hops too. Everybody is getting along well, and it is a beautiful November morning. So Henry Shoobridge decides to take a look at the river, which plays an important part in his work. Whenever you see hops growing, you can be sure that there is a river nearby. Hops will only grow in the rich alluvial soils of river valleys. Also, the river water is needed for irrigating the hop grounds in the dry summer months. Hops need good shelter too. Every good hop grower plants rows of trees, usually Lombardy poplars, to protect his hop grounds from the winds. Through the hot summer months of November, December, and January, the hops grow fast, several inches a day up their strings toward the summer sky. Soon the first young flowers, or cones as they are called, are forming at the top of the strings. There are several different varieties of hops. Some ripen earlier than others, but before any of them ripen, they will need to be irrigated. To irrigate his hop grounds, Henry Shoobridge has cut a big channel from the river. From this, the water is made to flow through smaller channels to each hop ground in turn. Some growers have to pump their water, but here the water flows by gravity. Now, on a hot January afternoon, Henry Shoobridge comes down to lend a hand in diverting the water to a new part of the hop grounds. This irrigation work is carried out 3 or 4 times during the growing season because the rainfall at Bushy Park is only 23 inches a year. That is not enough to make the hop vines grow their best. The cool, fresh water winds its quiet way among the hop poles, and a tractor plows furrows along the rows of vines. Now the men can lead the water from the channels along the furrows the tractor has made right to the feet of the thirsty hop vines. Slowly, the refreshing water soaks into the rich, warm soil and brings new life to the plump, ripening cones, swaying on their strings in the summer breeze. The hops are hanging heavy and ripe now, for it is early March and time for picking. The little township of Bushy Park is busy with life, and the pickers come from far and near for the picking season. The pickers live in huts near the hop grounds during the 3 or 4 weeks that the picking season lasts. It's a family affair, and lots of townspeople come to work in the hop fields for their annual holidays. Work in the fields starts at dawn and goes right on till dusk. Picking hops is hard, thirsty work, in among the trailing vines in the hot March weather. It's a change from town life, though, and of course there is good money to be earned. Men with knives on long poles cut the strings, and down come the vines, ready for stripping. The hop grounds are divided into blocks, and the groups of pickers strip 1 block at a time. Usually 2 or 3 pickers share a bin. Mother and father are sharing this one with their son. You can see by the way that father picks that this isn't the first time he has been in the hop fields. He just keeps picking and picking and picking until gradually the family bin fills up with ripe hops. Some of the people you see in the hop grounds may be professional pickers who make their living by travelling around Australia, picking fruit or vegetables through the seasons. Pineapples in Queensland, oranges in New South Wales, peaches in Victoria, and so on. Others just come to the hop fields for a holiday, and a fine holiday it is too. When the pickers have filled their bins, the hops are bundled into big bags called pokes, ready for weighing. Here come the men with the scales to weigh the pokes. They must be weighed carefully because the pickers are paid according to the weight of hops they have picked. The picker's name and the weight of his poke are written down. Then the bins move on to a new part of the hop grounds. Henry Shoobridge's son Angus is checking the morning's work while Henry Shoobridge himself keeps an eye on the loading of the pokes. The fresh hops must be carted without delay to the kilns for drying, or they will go mouldy. Away go the hops to the kiln. Hops are grown for several important reasons. We use hops in the making of yeast for baking. They are used in the making of beer, and they also contain chemicals which are needed for some kinds of medicine. At the kiln, the pokes travel on a moving belt up to the drying floor. The hops are tipped out, and then they are spread over the drying floor in a thick mass. Now the temperature is raised to between 110 and 120 degrees by means of hot air from furnaces in the basement. In this hot atmosphere, the moisture gradually dries out of the hops. As soon as they are dried, the hops are raked into another room, and here they lie in huge heaps until they have cooled off. Drying is most important, for the hops will lose their quality unless they are treated with great care. When the hops are cool, they go down through a hole to the baling press on the floor below. The press packs them tightly into bales, each weighing 240 pounds. Then the bale is stitched up and the Shoobridge brand is stamped on it. A lot of work has gone into those bales. First, at the end of the winter, there was the dressing of the hills before the hops started to grow. Then there was the stringing to be done in the springtime. And before the hops could start climbing, they had to be tied around their strings. Through the summer months, they had to be irrigated from the river to make them grow their best. And at the end of the summer, the hops were picked and taken to the kilns for drying. Yes, a lot of work has gone into those bales, and now Henry Shoobridge's shed is nearly full. Outside, the truck is piled high with bales of new season's hops, ready to go down the Derwent Valley to Hobart to be sold and shipped to the mainland. Henry Shoobridge is pleased with life. It's been a good year for the hop growers at Bushy Park, and he is looking forward to next season already.